Hello and welcome to the CTAM Europe Symposium session. I'm Kate Bulkley. I'm a media journalist and commentator based in the UK, and I'm here with John Porter, who's joining us from Belgium. Hello, John. How are you?
Good afternoon. Great to be with you,
Good
Kate.
afternoon. We were supposed to be doing this live, but we've had some technical difficulties, so we're actually recording this session and giving it to our audience on a record. So I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, but we'll do our best. So John, as most of you know, is the CEO of Telenet Group Holdings. It's a public company listed in Belgium, also has Liberty Global as a majority shareholder. John is in charge of the day-to-day operations of Telenet. He's been there, I think, about 8 years, right, John? Has it been 8 years you've been
Correct.
there?
Yep.
Wow.
Over 8 years.
And you cover 2 million fixed line customers, and you also have 2 million mobile customers. So it's an interesting company. So I thought we'd
3 million,
start
Kate.
big
3 million,
picture.
please.
Sorry, 3 million mobile. Oh my God, 3 million. So 2 million fixed and 3 million mobile. I thought we'd start big picture, John. The business is
hmm
changing. If we look at particularly the pay TV business and content business to start, people are consuming media differently. The rise of the streamers, whether it's Netflix or Disney, we've got all this going on. You've seen in your company that TV subscriptions aren't growing the way they used to. Even people that are taking three services aren't growing the way they used to. I know you've launched Streams, which is your answer, at least in part, to the streaming revolution. But talk to us a little bit about that. Is streaming the future of pay TV, or is it part of the future?
Well, the short answer is, of course, it's part of the future. And
Mm,
you've said that, of course, the basic traditional pay TV multi-channel video platform is not growing. That's a very mature element of the portfolio of entertainment options that we give our customers. That just puts more pressure on us to innovate, to be creative, to look at adjacencies in the entertainment space that we can develop business models for and continue to evolve. Hopefully, one step ahead of our customers' needs and expectations, and one step ahead of our competitors who are trying to do the same thing. There's an intersection of technology and networks and consumer behavior that are all inextricably joined at the hip, and it's critical that we keep up. And I think you probably have me on today because at Telenet we are driving a lot of innovation in both the more classical elements of television consumption, including broadcasting, but also in some of the more innovative and adjacent parts of the entertainment story. So happy to talk about those with you.
I mean, streams is interesting, and I agree with you. You've got a little bit of both. You have some broadcast channels now. You own some production companies. You're obviously
hmm
continuing to make sure your network is robust. But
hmm
for example, the stream service has been called a possible Flemish Netflix. I mean, is that your strategic? Is that where you're trying to go with that?
I wish it was a Flemish Netflix, and I'd have even more customers. But no, I think that's shorthand for the local journalists to describe what Streams is. Stream, we started with, well, let me start at the very beginning. Of course, we had SVOD products on Telenet for several years now. So for
Mm,
since I think to 2015. And those
mm,
products were evolving and were quite successful. And think actually with premium SVOD, I think we were sitting at about 30% of the video audience, which is a pretty good market share
mm.
in our industry in Europe. But as that business matured, it became more and more apparent that we were going to lose eyeballs to the streaming universe if we didn't figure out how to evolve that product. So we stepped into. We believe the basic supposition is that we believe there is room in the market for a local champion streaming service. I mean, you got to believe
Okay.
that we want to move forward like this, and there are certainly other examples of successful local champions just to the north. We've got Videoland and I think pretty much you'll see it in all the major scale European countries. We're also a little bit subscale, so we felt like we need to do that with partners. And the most obvious partner for us was DPG Media, which is the largest, mixed communications and media company in our region. We've had historically some good, but also some contentious relations with the broadcasting companies, and we'll talk about it later. But of course, we bought the second commercial broadcaster, right, to kind of break that cycle of pain that we have had with broadcasters for many years now, as their business model has evolved. So Streams has been a good opportunity for rapprochement between platforms and distributors and local broadcasters. So that's been one real benefit in putting that partnership together. The challenge now is,
and part of it was also about advertising too, wasn't it, John? Because these are advertising supported services for the most part. Yeah.
Well, yeah, Streams is no advertising, but we have. Okay. I don't think there's an OTT D2C service, maybe with the exception of Netflix, that isn't thinking about AVOD. I mean, I think that, just on subscriptions alone, it's pretty hard unless Netflix keeps raising its rates. They're now at $17.99 or something like that for a multi-stream subscription. AVOD is going to be in the picture for, I think, all the streaming services. But right now, it's a land grab. I would, without giving out specific numbers, I would say, we're probably sitting pretty close to Disney as the number 2 D2C streamer in the market. Right. We would obviously like to be growing more and doing better, and I think we will, because it's early days of distributing the product across other broadband distributors, including Proximus and Orange, in the market. But it's really this is too small a market to be continually fragmented between the classical broadcaster, the streamer, the online catch-up services that are offered by the broadcasters, by the amount of money the public broadcasters putting into to their platform. And we need to see some consolidation and some rationalization. And so doing the streaming service with DPG, but also having, importantly, HBO and HBO Max as part of the equation, has delivered what we think is a very competitive and compelling service, and we expect it to grow pretty continuously for the next couple of years.
And so is the plan, because obviously content is really important, and obviously the HBO Max agreement is really helpful. Do you plan to do other things like that? Will you bring other kinds of services into the tent, so to speak, into the Streams tent, or do you think you're going to just have to offer them as apps on your platform?
Well, I wouldn't rule it out. I mean, it's a question mark on what some of these other streaming D2C services, whether they're viable in a subscale market like this, or whether we should club together, whether it's, Paramount Plus or, I think Discovery will definitely do their own thing, and I'm sure we'll end up hosting their service. But the way we see it is, the more we can be an integrator and not just an aggregator, the more vital and viable our platform is to the consumer. So we certainly would prefer to integrate our services, whether it's through Streams or through our existing UI platform. But that's something that the streamers to date have, with the exception of Amazon, have resisted.
They have indeed. Let's talk a little bit about content more generally, because you've also done some interesting moves in the content production space. You bought a company called Caviar, for example. You have another company called Defiver. I mean, this is an interesting move. You're actually owning production companies and making things. And of course, my favorite show that I guess is now up is the FUCKUU very much. So I don't even want to say it out loud. But this idea
Yeah.
of owning content and producing content, talk a little bit about that. Why is that so central to the strategic plan?
Well, for a couple of reasons. One, it underpins our local champion uh, customer value proposition.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there may be a day where we lose HBO and the Warner products, HBO Max products, etc. And that's a sizable economic relationship. We can turn around and put that into local production. But the second big reason is the production industry is on fire right now. I just had a Caviar board meeting today. They're 30% ahead of budget year to date.
Wow.
Their biggest problem is finding the next generation of EPs and showrunners, and to keep the train rolling forward. They also
Mm-hmm.
derive about 65% of their revenue outside of Belgium, which gives
Wow.
us scale and diversification in the production sector. So we own a company called Westemvis, which is probably one of the most iconic production houses. Has traditionally produced programming for the public broadcaster as well as for SBS, which is the broadcaster we own, um, and Caviar, which is a very strong anchor production house for DPG Media, as well as the VRT, as well as for us. And that's creating a real powerhouse. I think what the business model is to be the scale production house in our region and in our country. But really, the most important part of the strategy is to take local content that we have and globalize it. And you've certainly seen, everyone's noticed on Netflix, of course, that international content, whether it's Casa de Papel or Squid Game or whatever happens to be, is being consumed all over the world,
Mm.
and crosses borders a lot easier than people probably ever thought it would. It started
Yeah.
a bit with the Nordics and some of the stuff they
Mm-hmm.
produced, but for example, one of our popular shows here, what was made by Caviar called The Clan, that's now being made in California
Mm-hmm.
in English. Tabula Rasa, also a very popular show here, also being reshot in England. Um, and we think there's real upside for the content that the scripted content that we develop and produce, to take globally. Also
Yeah, this
formats.
I was going to say
We've been
formats
successful
is a
there
big
as well.
business. Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
formats, as you know, is if you get it right, that is just I mean that's a wonderful business because obviously if it's a good format and it travels, you're going to have it made in every single country and every time it's made, you get a fee. So that's a wonderful business. So that's your plan. It sounds like it's not just to feed your local network, it's to actually
no.
grow another revenue stream and be a global player.
Yeah, I mean, small countries and regions like Flanders or Denmark or places. There's a cultural neutrality that makes that makes their content travel very well.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lack of ego and parochialism in their content, and we've had success with formats as well. We have one format that about I think a dozen countries actually come to us to reproduce for in their own language and with their own stars and everything else. But they use our sets, our production capability, and everything else. I mean, the Caviar, is well over 100 million of revenue and growing 30% per year, and it's a
Wow.
fabulous business, and it's a global
Mm.
business.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if you were going to, again, as you from a CEO perspective, how much money are
Mm-hmm.
you putting into sort of the content side of the business versus what I might call the traditional infrastructure side of the business? Do you think I mean, is it kind of 60-40? Is it 90-20? I mean, where is the emphasis, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, right now there's a heavy allocation on the next generation of telecommunications networks, whether it's 5G or fiber to the home. This dwarfs the investments that we're making in media, but we're not shying away from from putting bets on in the media space. And, a good example of that, of course, is our investment in the Park, which is a location-based virtual reality entertainment centers. Do we think that being in the location-based virtual reality business is something that's a great business? No, but it is very much a platform for innovation, for what we see as the next generation of entertainment. So there's very few things that I agree with Mark Zuckerberg on, but the one thing I do agree with him is that VR has a substantial role to play, whether it's through gaming or pure entertainment or just connecting people in the next generation of digital electronic communications. So, eventually we see it going back into the home once the glasses side of thing gets quite simplified and cheaper. And we think it's going to be a feature of future generations of whether it's 5G, low latency gaming through headsets, or whether it's just pure entertainment.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk a little bit more about what Mark Zuckerberg was saying, because he came out with some incredible comments this week. He says there'll be a $10 billion, that's B's and billion dollar dent in his operating profits this year. That's 1 year, due to investment in the Facebook Reality Labs, which is this VR and AR stuff. So you're right. He's throwing money at this. Just before we get into a little bit more of that about sports, is sports part of that? Because I know in the past we've always thought sports is one of the sine qua nons of pay TV. You have to have live sport. You've done some interesting things in sport. Obviously, I think you've still got the Premier League rights. You're doing some other football rights with 11, I think is part of the deal. But you've also invested in clubs, and you've got some stadium and things like that. So talk a little bit about where sports fits in.
Well, before I go to the big picture, I just respond to what you just said, which is we've taken 100% of our investment in the physical aspect of sports, and we're putting it into the development of women and underserved communities and underserved children in the development of clubs and very integrated service clubs where they go to play after practice, and they do practice, and then they have study sessions, and really exciting work being done. But also Belgium's behind some markets in terms of its development of women's sport, and so we're not sponsors of the first division clubs anymore. We're moving it all into developing the game more holistically with previously underserved audience segments. But to talk about sport more generally, we are, of course, sport is probably the thing that's going to enable us to continue to retain the urgency of watching live television. Of course, nobody's really interested in watching games the next day. And so we have developed and are sustaining an 8-channel sport package, but with less emphasis on exclusive sport. Pretty much the only thing that we have competed for and exclusive rights is the Premier League. So for the local league, we share that with the other operators. With most other sports are non-proprietary, but between ourselves, our 8 channels, 11, which is kind of I would say just a sort of intermediary, if you will. And then you have, of course, Eurosport, but which has a couple of sports that are of quite of interest to the Belgian audience, particularly cycling and tennis.
Cycling,
yeah. So, we have 11 or 12 full-time devoted sports channels on the platform. So, I think we would say that the CVP is, if you like any sport at all, you need to be a customer.
It's interesting, though, as you say, it's like about sharing rights rather than worrying so much about exclusivity. And when you have those rights, maybe putting your own branding or marker on it. I was talking to someone earlier about how you have different audio feeds, for example, for commentary and things like that. I mean, that's a way to sort of put your own brand on it, and yet it's not as if you have exclusive access to these sports.
That's right. We need to create context, and we need to localize the sports. We need to get the fans involved. We need to create. I mean, there's a whole sort of social component to sports that we can own, which is, you know, the commentary, the after the game magazine shows, and we can go cross-platform with our broadcaster. And we do, you know, the big wrap-up show on Sundays on broadcast. We've actually launched an open sports channel here as well, where it's not part of a premium offering, where we can sort of create a really nice environment and show all the sports that we have to offer. But if you really want to get into it, you need to subscribe to the premium offering. So we definitely, we're in sports for the long term. We believe in it. I would say, you know, ESPN's entertainment and sports programming network, that was what it was 40 years ago when it launched. They might have lost a little bit the entertainment side, but we're trying to dial up the entertainment and the social components of sport, keep it local, keep it, you know, what Belgian people love, and, you know, really provide a full offering. It's difficult when you get these irrational, you know, out of market people jumping in and buying, like what happened in the Netherlands with Formula One, you know, where completely irrational, you know, in my mind, bidder for the God forbid Max Verstappen gets, you know, sidelined because the whole economics of that will fall over. But yeah, no, we're battling away. We're getting what we need.
I think that's the point, because you know, it's not like sports rights are ever going to get cheaper, I don't think. And you're right, there will be some irrational moments as people try to make a play or make a stand to build their companies up. So it's an interesting approach. Let's talk a little bit about gaming and advertising, and get back to the metaverse, because when you talked about Zuckerberg, one of the things he's talking a lot about is what he calls the metaverse, which is basically the future iteration of the internet. He says, well, it's going to be where people work, play, and interact, and that's why they're throwing this huge $10 billion into it just this year to talk about augmented and virtual reality. I mean, you know, how, I know that you've said, for example, in the past, that you believe that, you know, you've got to speed up the realization of new viewing experiences and respond to the new ways in which media are consumed. That's a quote from you. So what did you mean by that? Is that, are you thinking about things in the way that Mark Zuckerberg's thinking about it?
Well, I also have a bit of a different view, is that I think consumer behavior and the consumption of TV, classic TV, is always over, the demise of it is always overestimated. I mean, we now allow our customers, we've created modularity in our packaging where TV is an option. I mean, you have, you know, we lead with broadband and mobile. Well, we don't even lead with products. We lead with a data relationship with the customer, platform agnostic, device agnostic, unlimited data everywhere. We tier it on speed, and we tier it on how many SIMs you want. But after that, you can have TV. You have TV as an option. So we have what we call iconic, which is the classic TV. And then we have something called Flow, which is essentially, you know, broadband TV, if you will. And the attachment rate of iconic TV is 90% still. I mean, it's this mass migration away from lean back television is highly overrated. I think it will take some time. I've been hearing about the demise of TV for 25, 30 years. I mean, it hasn't happened. The advertising universe has gotten hit pretty hard, and there's been disintermediation of advertising income for different platforms. But the fact that people just want to sit back and chill, that hasn't changed. So I think the move to a much more active, lean forward universe of this is the way TV is going to be for everybody is overstated released by the Facebook position on the metaverse. I think it will be an element of the way people, want to be entertained in the future. I mean, Zuckerberg wants to disintermediate the mobile data business, the TV business, the every business. And I think he's a little bit over optimistic about how ready the consumer is to be the master of their own domain when it comes to entertainment.
Right. It is interesting though. Like I'm sure you're familiar with Fortnite, the mega game that seems to be one of the sort of, I don't know, the poster child for what's going on in Fortnite. You go into the game and you don't just game now. You can go see a concert, or you can go meet your friends, and you can have
Mm-hmm.
avatars. I mean, it just seems like there must be something there. And I agree with you. It probably won't happen next week, but this generation, or let's say a part of the younger generation, seems to me wants to have more of an interactive experience. So, I mean, it sounds like you're doing some of that because you've got the park, right? I mean, you've talked
Mm-hmm.
about some of that, but as you say, you just keep, or do you just focus on what you're doing, and just as it plays out, you'll have the broadband or the fiber networks that people will need to play in that world, if they, let's say, put it that way.
I think if we throw in the towel and say, hey, we're just going to provide a high-speed connection for you, that, we'll be completely commoditized. We're going to be the water department of the, next decade. And
No,
that's not really very interesting to me.
no.
Also because, we have competition here who are doing the same thing, building fiber and launching 5G and everything else. So networks are increasingly commoditized. So it actually behooves us to find the areas where, we have a right to play when it comes to, differentiated experiences around entertainment. And I would be very reluctant to just say, oh well, it's all going to be D2C and Facebook and Fortnite and everything else, so we don't really have a role there. So that's what we're trying. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be the the trusted interface to a mountain of entertainment and options, and even if it goes heavy into VR or heavy into gaming or heavy, broadcasting goes down the tubes, we still have a role to play as somebody who's as an integrator, providing a seamless and formidable user interface, somebody who's able to acquire the metadata that helps the consumer, the viewer, navigate what is an increasingly complex and fragmented world. So,
No.
that's where we provide value. We can
Mhm.
also provide value by actually creating and providing some of these services that people are going to want down the road. And at least in our market, we think we can do that. I'm sure in other markets, it's probably difficult for the platform, for the distributor to play that role, but we think we can do that as well.
Hmm. You've mentioned advertising a couple of times, and I think you bought an advertising company, haven't you? I mean, because you're
Well, we
now
created
selling
one.
advertising. You created one,
We
okay.
created one.
So talk about
Yeah,
how
we cre-
important that is, because that's a whole nother revenue stream, and not necessarily something that pay TV companies were started out thinking about, but certainly in the UK, Sky's got a huge advertising business now. So talk about what your
mhm.
advertising ambitions are.
Well, once again, we're a small market. We have the public broadcaster, and we have two media companies of substance. One is DPG Media, that's the number
Hmm.
one broadcaster, the number one wide distribution newspaper and digital newspaper. And then we have Media House, who's a little bit distant number two on those fronts, but they don't have any broadcasting. So DPG Media, just like they should have, has been working very hard over the last 6 or 7 years on cross platform sales. As they see their classic broadcast income under pressure, they're trying to pick it up through digital, but also through cross platform, you know, relationships with the big
Hmm.
advertisers. Um, if we had done nothing, then we would have all been very distant, second, third, fourth, whatever. So we have the broadcasting advertising revenue. Media House has the print advertising revenue. We also have radio. DPG has radio. So what we've done is we've created essentially I don't want to say duopoly, but there are now two, ad sales houses who then in turn distribute the money appropriately to their participants. DPG is one thing, and they have also picked up because of their scale. They've picked up, I think, Viacom and some other classical pay TV, maybe Disney as well. I'm not sure. But then we've created one of scale as well. So we sell cross-platform. We sell, the same way DPG does. That's why we're in the advertising business. And interestingly, we're partners with DPG too. So in streams, so it's a very cozy situation.
It's a cozy. Well, that's good. Cozy is good. The advertising business, I don't think it's going away. In fact, I think it's getting, it's going to grow bigger, because my belief is that people are only going to pay for so many SVOD services, subscription VOD. They're going to, at some point, want to have an ad-supported VOD or something like that, because they're just not going to want to have all these subscriptions. So I think there's room for this to grow. So I think certainly, and given the fact that Facebook and Google are just eating up the digital advertising space, it seems to me that coming in with a cross-platform play is a very good idea indeed. So.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Like I said, I think I said it earlier. I don't think there's a streaming service other than Netflix, but I even think probably even Netflix that isn't thinking about what is their AVOD strategy, when can they implement it, because you're right. There's going to be diminishing return on subscription fees. Yeah. People aren't going to pay 25 euros a month for a D2C service, even if it's Netflix. So, how do they grow their businesses, and how do they cover their costs, their content costs, in an increasingly competitive environment for content?
Right. I have just a couple more questions, then we'll wrap up. One was sort of about the scale plays that we're seeing going on, and what's happening. Literally people, and you're doing it to a certain extent yourself in Belgium, where people are working together. For example, I'm thinking about in France, all the broadcasters are getting together and doing Salto, which is their streaming service. You're seeing RTL working with people in the German market to do different things. Are there other scale plays that you'll be doing in your market, or even outside of your market? How much more consolidation, I guess, is the question, do you think you'll see, or you'll be part of in your markets?
Well, I think people who were following the RTL sales process in the Benelux and in the markets other than their home market you could interpret that as really a move towards a single commercial broadcaster in some pretty key markets. I think that's probably in the future of television world. That's probably what European markets are going to be able to preserve. So I think that's going to be a feature. The streaming alliance in France is, we have that Streams is partnership between the only two commercial broadcasters in our region, which is ourselves and DPG. That's another move. I think, the challenge for Europe, and I think where regulation has gone wrong in Europe over the last decade, is really seeing fragmentation as the preservation of competition, to the point where now many markets, company broadcasters and telcos and others are so subscale that it's just very difficult to, once you see the globalization of a market, then we don't stand a chance. God forbid Elon Musk figures out how to get €5 internet into everyone's home, and we still have 50 telcos in Europe and 130 cable companies. So that is a problem, and the regulator is going to have to really reconsider allowing further consolidation in these markets that are getting increasingly globalized.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Two quick questions. One is, do you think you'll buy more content companies? Because that sounds like something that you're leaning into, or do you think you've got enough at the moment?
Well, there, the truth of the matter is, and I'll tell this because it's a closed audience, and is that other production, sort of small production houses are knocking on our door. I mean,
Mm,
a lot of these guys are auteurs, they're creative. They don't want to run a business. They want to create
right,
content and formats and
right.
that kind of stuff. So,
Mm,
our sort of sister company through Liberty Global, All Three Media, is a bit
hmm.
of a house of brands, of production houses and auteurs as well. And that's an avenue that we see ourselves
Mm,
pursuing. The two biggest
great.
production houses here are Caviar and West End, and then everything else is smaller. So I
Right,
think we'll
right.
see continued opportunities to partner with some of these
Right.
smaller productions.
So they should keep knocking, it sounds like.
Keep knocking, keep knocking. It's good to have a. Also, they don't have access to capital necessarily. They don't get paid fast enough. I mean, it's always a hassle.
Yeah,
It's nice
yeah,
to have a company that generates a half a billion of cash every year, and you know can back you to compete on a
yeah.
global level.
Yeah, no, it's a very very fair point. Last question. In the UK, we've had Sky launch something called Sky Glass. They're basically getting into the television production business. You buy a TV and you get your Sky inside. Comcast has just launched a similar product in the U.S. market. Are you going to get into the television retailing business, selling Telenet enabled streamed TV sets?
If we did, we'd probably do it with Sky Glass. I think it's a great product. It's the technology is terrific. I mean, the question is it a mass market product? I guess, and
Mm,
what's the cycle rate of people replacing
yeah,
their TVs
yeah,
and their current setups and all that? But I think it's a very strong product, and
yeah,
I heard that they were licensing it to Foxtel in Australia. So
they are.
obviously they're open for broader distribution, and I think it's something
Right.
we should watch very closely. We're not gonna invent it here, reinvent it here. So that's not
No,
the plan.
but you might be knocking on their door. It sounds like okay.
Yeah, we might knock on their door. We're all about partnerships, partners in life for life. That's our motto here.
Oh, I like that. That's a great motto and a wonderful place for
Yeah,
us to end because I think we've run out of time. John Porter, CEO of Telenet, really lovely speaking with you. I appreciate your time, taking the time to talk to the CTAM Europe Symposium. Thank you for being with us, everyone who's watched this. I'm Kate Bulkley. Thanks for being with us, and goodbye.